Disaster Recovery webinar. We are excited to have you join us. I just wanted to quickly introduce our presenter, Bill Martin. Bill Martin has been working with consulting firms for over 30 years, providing services for Fortune 100 environments. His extensive experience includes architecting infrastructure solutions based in the cloud, on-premises, and in hybrid configuration to allow his customers to use technology to meet their business requirements. We look forward to speaking with you. I'm going to let Bill take over. And please note that we do have a chat window down that I'm going to turn off, but the Q&A window will be open. So please make sure to put your questions there.
Everyone, and thank you, Lindsay. I'm going to go ahead and take over as presenter and present my desktop. And you guys should be seeing it shortly. So today we're going to talk about Azure Disaster Recovery and basically business continuity plans. So as Lindsay said, I am Bill Martin. I have been working in the IT field far longer than I could possibly sometimes want to think about. I like to say I started working on computers when you could open the door and step into them. That doesn't happen much anymore. So just shows you I've been around, done many, many different things in this environment. And so I'm very pleased to present the Azure Disaster Recovery for you today. A couple housekeeping things here. This webinar should be about 60 minutes. I'll try to keep it a little short. We definitely will not go over that, where we want to be respectful of your time. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be emailed to all the attendees here. As Lindsay stated, there is a Q&A, and you please enter any of your questions into the Q&A. We'll be glad to answer those questions at the end. We'll just kind of go from there. So that said, what are we going to cover today? Why is DR important? What are business continuity and disaster recovery concepts? Understanding what Azure Site Recovery is and how it can be used to help your business. Also, Azure Backup. And then understanding how you can use Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup to protect your different workloads and your data on your sites. So why is disaster recovery important? Question I always like to ask customers, and I know there was a poll out there and I didn't get a chance to actually look and see the results of that, is do you have a business continuity / disaster recovery plan? Are you backing up your data? How are you backing up? Are you testing your backups? I'm really surprised often how many times I go into customer sites and yes, they're doing backups, but when they actually try to restore something, it doesn't work, that they've never actually verified their backups are working or haven't tested them in the recent past. Along the same lines, many customers that I've been to, some small, medium, and some very large customers have either no or a limited disaster recovery process. They may have some main systems up. They may or may not be testing it on a regular basis for failover. So why do you need to make sure that you have a DR plan? A couple of good examples is, for the Northeast blackout, you need to be able to run your business today. Everything today is all online, websites, whether they be internal customers or external facing customers. You need to be able to continue to run your business if you process sales, take orders, deliver services out to your customers. And if we have a blackout, for example, as the Northeast blackout back in 2003, it affected 10 million people in Ontario, over 45 million people across 8 states in the U.S. That's just one example. And that was a function, no power. Maybe you had a UPS and a diesel backup that would only last for X period of time. May not have that. So you need a plan for how we're going to move those resources to another location. Another example is weather. Hurricane Sandy, for example. How much damage did that cause? How much businesses did it put out of commission for a time being? I have a customer, for example. I mean, there's many, many reasons. And I have a customer, for example, when we were setting up their disaster recovery plan, we asked what their biggest concern was. And they said, honestly, trains. And I said, pardon me? And they said that trains were their biggest concern because the data center was right next to a train line that they constantly ran chemical trains by them all day long. And they were concerned if that train derailed, it could wipe out that data center. Anyways, moving toward that is, here's some trends for disaster recovery. We're starting to see, Gartner has done reports, TechTarget has done reports, and we're seeing increased usage of using the cloud for DR. In the past, customers either had their own data center that was a backup, or maybe they, hosted a solution with a third-party provider. And now it's getting a little easier to be able to use the cloud. Well, actually, it's a lot easier to use the cloud for that. The spend on how much people are actually looking to increase for a DR or business continuity plan has greatly increased year after year, and we anticipate seeing that growth to continue on. Microsoft is in a great position to offer a hybrid ability to back up your systems and have failover and site recovery of those systems, whether they be virtual or physical or in Azure or in another cloud service such as AWS. So some of the challenges for business continuity. Complexity of data and applications. Like I've got a lot of different applications. Most of those applications are multi-tier. How do I make sure that I'm backing up all of those systems or protecting all of those systems? How do I make sure that I bring all that tiered application back up online at the same time, and no complexities based on bringing up the tier at the wrong time? Too much data. I've just got a lot of data. It costs a lot of money to transport that data, to store that data in storage on another site or up in the cloud. Data retention requirements. How long do I need to keep that? And as well as not only the time limit, but the cost of the storage along that time. Untested disaster recovery. And as I mentioned, I have had customers that have DR plans, but they do not test them, or they don't test them often enough, maybe once every couple of years versus once a quarter or twice a year, which is probably a better idea. And as well as, a big concern for any business is how much is it going to cost me to be able to do this? So Azure Site Recovery addresses all of these points. The first piece is automate. We set up to, replicate systems up into the cloud, and then we have runbooks and processes that we can use to automate. We can even set up alerts based on, so for example, if we use an operations management suite, we can set up alerts, say if I'm getting an alert that a system is down or whatever, automatically go launch this runbook, and that runbook can go and fail over to the system that we're backing up into the cloud, that we're replicating in the cloud. We want to make sure that we have a scaled solution that integrates, whether it be a planned failover, so we want to do a test, or we just need to we're going to fail over so we can test a new version of software, or maybe something happened, weather, power, whatever, and we just need to fail over immediately. We want to make sure that we eliminate media management. A lot of times these days, with backup and or replication, where are we storing that data? How much is it costing us? Which tier of storage is it on? And along those lines. So we eliminate that as well. And of course, as I said, implement, test. We want to make sure that we're testing that failover. And of course, last but definitely not least, if we want to make sure that this is cost effective. So there's two areas, as I mentioned, with Azure Disaster Recovery. There is Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup. And the focus area of each is, Azure Backup, we want to make sure that we have reliable off-site data protection. Many customers today are still using tape. Nothing absolutely wrong with that. It still works. It's been working for many, many years. But typically they back up the tape and then they hire someone to take those tapes and store them off-site in a vault. And then they count on, if they need to restore, they need to go and get those tapes from that third-party provider and bring that back. All that is time-consuming, as well as additional costs you may not need to have. So using the off-site data protection and storing the backups in the cloud You no longer have to hire a third party to take those tapes off-site, as well as you can have instantaneous access to restore them rather than wait to get those tapes back. Azure Site Recovery, the focus being on orchestrated or automated recovery. We want to make sure that it's automated as far as in the background. Once we set up the replication, it's basically set it and forget it. Of course, we really don't want to truly forget it. We do want to do health monitoring of that and make sure that that recovery, replication is happening on a regular basis and not failing. So protection. What are the needs in many diverse IT environments? We need to make sure where we're protecting the data, where does it live, how can we prevent the downtime or minimize that downtime. In any DR solution, there's going to be some downtime, but we want to make sure we minimize that. And when we bring it back up, we want to make sure that the data we had is there. You know, we don't have a whole loss. If you've been entering sales all day long, you don't want to restore back to your environment and suddenly you go, I've lost all the sales that have been entered today. So we want to make sure our replication schedule is timed based on that application so we minimize the data loss or eliminate the data loss. And as I said, you know, IT wants a fail-safe process workflow. They don't need to go through and try to manually fail every system over. That takes a lot more time, as well as it introduces the ability for human error. I'd like to say I never make any mistakes, but I don't know about you, but I know I sure do. So the hybrid IT cloud management provides, you know, continual health monitoring. You'll see that in a minute when we get into the demo, where we can see the status of the replication and or the backup. One of the big concerns is my data secure going up to the cloud? The data is definitely secure. It is stored in your customer space. Nobody else has access to that. No other customers, not Microsoft. They're not scanning it or, you know, looking at anything for it. It is your area, as well as the data transmission. Data in transmit is encrypted, and it's encrypted once it gets there and data at rest. So your data is safe up there. We want to make sure that we're providing always on backup and always on disaster or site recovery processes. And of course, we need to make sure we support your environment. Very few environments today are one type scenario. Okay, I'm all physical, I'm all virtual, I'm all VMware, I'm all Hyper-V. There's typically a mix of all of the above, or at least many of the above, and we need to make sure that we support every different type of environment that you have. So along those lines, there's a couple different scenarios that Azure Site Recovery will support. It can do Hyper-V to Hyper-V, on-premise to on-premise. So if you already have a secondary data center and you want to continue to use that data center and not necessarily use the cloud for replication, but you want an automated process to make sure that that replication happens, we can use Azure Site Recovery to replicate the data from data center 1 to data center 2. It does go up and through the cloud and down again to get to there, but we want to make sure that we're able to have a reliable system on that secondary site for us to be able to fail over, and our automated processes will, you know, work with that site. We can also use SAM replication along those lines with Hyper-V to Hyper-V. Another one is just Hyper-V up to Microsoft Azure. So we're storing our data up in the cloud. Now, one thing in reference to cost efficiency is we're not just creating a virtual machine up in Azure, and so you're paying the cost of multiple different virtual machines that you're not actually using. They're just, you know, waiting for that disaster to happen. It's actually being replicated basically to a virtual disk, and that virtual disk is not actually running. So you're not paying that cost of that virtual machine. It's only the storage that is being used. In the event of a failover, those virtual disks are used to create virtual machines. At that point, that's when you would need to start paying for the virtual machines. So you see, it's a very cost-effective way of doing business and disaster planning. Another solution is VMware or physical machines over to another site, another VMware location. Could be on the same location. Obviously, that wouldn't be the best solution, but you know, typically that would be a secondary data center. Or you could also do the VMware or physical up to a Microsoft Azure solution. And once again, same thing. We're not actually creating virtual machines up there. we're basically just storing them as virtual disk. In the event we need to do a failover, they're failed back to on-site as a VMware. We can't actually restore back to a physical, but we can restore back to a VMware environment to bring them back on-site. So backup. As I mentioned earlier, I know many customers are still using tape backup. I know a lot of customers are using a kind of a hybrid type solution where they're backing up to disk, whether they're taking a snapshot of that or just backing up to disk and then backing that up to tape and then sending those tapes off-site. Using Azure Backup, that eliminates the need for those tapes and eliminates the additional steps required for the multiple different pieces. You still have your data being secured up there. And with anything with Azure, you can set it's locally on site with 3 different copies on site, and it is recommended for redundancy states that you set up basically replication across locations. So you have 3 copies of your data on the local site and then 3 copies of your data on another Azure site. And that just, once again, further increases the ability to prevent data loss. We want to make sure that, the applications are consistent with the backups are consistent with the applications we're doing, whether it's, Microsoft Exchange, SQL servers, SharePoint link, the Azure Backup and the DPM, Microsoft Deployment Protection Management is designed and works best with Microsoft solutions. You can definitely back up systems themselves, but it's really designed to and works very effectively with the Microsoft applications. That said, let me go ahead and jump on over into the actual demo here. And what I need to do in the demo is, in order to set up Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup, you need to do a couple things beforehand. And I've already taken care of these things because we wouldn't have time to complete all these during this demo. So for example, a couple of things you need to do is you need to set up a storage account. And as I said, that's recommended to be geo-redundant. You could be local redundant, but for additional high availability, it's recommended that is geo-redundant. You need to set up an Azure virtual network. In the event of a failover, you need to be able to fail the machines back and have them be able to communicate with each other as well as all of your business systems that are available. And we need to set up a recovery vault. And so what you're seeing here on the screen right now is my recovery vault. I actually called it OMS Recovery Vault. As I mentioned, Operations Management Suite is a solution or service is provided by Microsoft. It is a web-based management solution, and you can tie in not only things such as log analytics and great power of looking at your systems and getting great value from your systems and identifying best practices, but it also ties in access to your Azure Site Recovery as well as Azure Backup. So you see here we have Azure Site Recovery, and I kind of wanted to point out a few things here. You show replicated items. This is a lab environment, so as you see, I only have one server that is currently being replicated. But also as a quick look, I can see monitoring down here and site recovery health, unhealthy servers. The good news is I have none, since I only have one server and it's healthy. But if I had a server that was failing, it would pop up here and you'd see that right away. As well as sliding on down here to backups, you can see exactly which virtual machines are out there, which files are being backed up. The jobs that are actually being scheduled. For example, if I clicked on the jobs, you can see that I have a couple different jobs that are scheduled. First job was just configuring backup. That one was one time, but then I have a regular backup running daily. I have another backup here that failed, and if I had looked into the errors, and I'll show you that a little bit later, you'll see that that failure was actually because I double-clicked the mouse and I tried to run a backup when it was already running. But you can drill down and see different things. So your replication, you can see which items are being replicated. And I'll click here, and it shows you, okay, this is my server. The health is that it's happy. And I can go through, and if I choose, or want to have additional information, I can add additional columns over here as well to show additional information about that. Most customers are comfortable just seeing the basic health, but you have the option of being able to show that. Clicking this system here and clicking here pretty much shows the same thing. Also, you see site recovery jobs I showed to failed. And this is actually, you can click on here and get additional detail as to what failed on there and why. So you see this particularly failed when it was starting, when I did the initial setup for it, installing the mobility services. But you can be able to find out what had failed during the process. These were failures during happened when I was doing the setup. But if you had failed during a regular replication, you'd be able to drill down into that as well. So let me go ahead and kind of walk through a few of the pieces that you are going to use and going to create. If I click on the settings button over here, you can see we have a whole lot of options that we can kind of go through. Troubleshooting, that's something that's coming soon. It's not there yet, but it's going to have common steps to be able to troubleshoot. So expect to find that there in the near future. You can go on and look at the logs that you're actually showing, whether they be critical logs or errors or whatever. I can go ahead and open any single log and look and see what's going on in that log. For example, I just mentioned the failure on this thing, and it kind of shows the detail in there, and you can scroll down and dig down into your various logs to look at that. You can actually open a support ticket with Microsoft. If you're having an issue and you want to go through, you can basically just walk through this wizard, enter the type of report, and submit an actual support request. When we first set up the Azure Site Recovery, and for the backup, there's various different things that we need to set up, and we walk through these different components here to set that up. For example, Site Recovery has a few things. We needed to prepare the infrastructure. Depending on what you're trying to migrate or replicate from, whether it be a virtual machine, a physical machine, a Hyper-V, whether you have System Center Virtual Machine Manager in the mix, this configuration here would be different based on that. For this one, for physical machine / VMware, I basically had to create a replication server or a management server. And then you kind of walk down through here, and we had to go through and enable replication. We'll actually kind of walk through some of this as I show you in a minute of how we're actually going to add another system to be replicated. And then recovery plans. We need to be able to, restore the system in the event of a failure of, the site failing, power, whatever the case may be. But we also could perchance need to create a recovery plan. So, all right, I'm not just restoring or failing over this system, but I need to fail over this application. So I need to make sure that all of these systems are included in this recovery plan, and they're all going to be restored at the same time. And so that application comes up and is functional and not, missing a database, for example. And then one of the other things that you can look at is, what jobs are actually running, and it's broken down into backup jobs. And you see the jobs here. We just multiple views of getting to that, or the site recovery jobs that are actually running. And so you can get a job of not only which ones are running, perchance at the time, but when it ran, and then drill down and look into, status of that specific job. Now, you can also look at the backup items, what is protected. As you see in my environment, it's pretty minor. I only have one system in backup and one system in replication, but you can drill down into here and look and see all the different systems that are out there. And then we can also set up and add additional replications or additional backups into this as well. But then one of the things that you may want to do is during the setup of the site, we need to create replication policies or backup policies, and you can come in here and edit the ones that you currently have, or you can create new ones if you need to. Or when you set up a new system, you can also go create new ones or use existing ones. For example, if you notice in here with System Center with VMM, for VMware and physical machines, for Hyper-V sites, depending on the type of scenarios, which policies you would have out there and what are the settings for that, whether we need to set up the virtual machine manager servers, Hyper-V hosts are out there, or the physical machines that we need to configure. So for example, on here, if you click on this, since I'm doing a physical machine, you see I have my management server here that's created and configured. And that was done during the initial setup of that. But I can also come in here and look at the replication policies I have. And you can open up and look at any one of the policies. Maybe. Okay. So in here, you see the policies that are actually set up during the process. And, what is the target type? What is the threshold for, how often it's going to be backing up? And what is recovery point retention? We're going to keep this for 24 hours. You can change that to, many different times. And how often are we going to do that snapshot? Once again, this piece here is how critical is that data? How much does that data change in that time? If it's something where you're taking orders and you have, thousands of orders that are coming in every 5 minutes, obviously you would want to probably do replication faster than every 60 minutes. If it's, a file server that doesn't get a whole lot of changes, then, maybe 60 minutes is a good time. So you can come in here and edit any given one of those by just clicking on edit, and you come in and change any of the settings. Or you can go through and create new policies as well if need be by coming over here and click on add replication policy, and then I'll walk through and set the wizard to go ahead and create a new policy. And you just choose what's the name, what is the type of service, Hyper-V physical, VMware, where's your target. Right now my target's only set up for Azure, and then the settings for that. And then if you have a fallback policy, you can add that as well during here. So let me go ahead and jump back over here. One of the other things you can also look at your recovery plans. I currently only have one recovery plan, but honestly, it's not real accurate because it's only for one machine and not for multiple. It's not for multi-tiered. But you can come in here and manage and look at your recovery plans as well. So let's go ahead and set up a new system for replication. It's as simple as just coming on and clicking on plus for replicate. And then we're going to have to walk through and configure some things. Since I have this is a physical machine and it's going to be using my management server, the source is basically the management server. And so my physical machine talks to and sends the data to the management server, and the management server sends it up to Azure. The machine type, is it virtual or physical? In this case, I have it listed as physical. And in actuality, this is running in Azure, but the way it's set up, I have it set up as physical, so it looks at it as physical. And then what is my management server or my process server that I'm using? So I said all that. Now you can't have multiple process servers out there. Depending on the number of systems you're trying to replicate, typically the number is usually estimated at about 200 servers, but it is dependent upon how much data you're replicating, how many drives in that, and how much data is being replicated from those drives up. So you can have multiple servers that are created, and then you can assign the different replication to those different servers to have better performance in running your replication out there. So then we're just going to come in here and, where is the target? What is subscription? Many customers have multiple different subscriptions that they use. Which deployment model are we using? We can use the Resource Manager, which is the new Azure portal, or we can use the old Azure Classic for that. I like to use the Resource Manager for all my things now, and most of the features are there, and then just click OK. And I also slipped off there, but you also need to select which virtual network you're going to be using. Now, here's where I select what system I want to be able to replicate. So if we had done a VMware, we can, when we set up for VMware, it can basically scan all the VMware servers and list all the virtual machines that are running, and you would see them all here. I don't have that set up, so you don't see this list. I only have added physical machines, or have physical machines on here, and so I have only one listed. Now, if for some reason I did not see my physical machine, I can click on here to add physical machine, and then I can enter the machine name and the IP address, and what is the OS, Windows or Linux, and it'll go off and basically find that, and then it'll be listed here to be able to select. In this case, since I have one machine here, I'm going to go ahead and select it. And then, once again, there's not very much on this machine, so some of these options are grayed out, but I can choose to select which disk I want to replicate and which ones I don't. There's only one disk on here, so it's only set up for all disks. This account is used to be able to access the machine as well. That is something that was also set up. Typically, you're using backing up domain machines, and you want to be able to have, or typically use a domain account in order to do that. Bottom line is you need to be able to have an account that can access the drive with administration privileges. And that was one of the initial setups in order to be able to do that. And then come in and choose which policy you want to do. And I just have one basic policy that's out there in the settings. Now, this MultiVM Consistency, this ties together. If I click on this, this is where you set up for you want to be able to replicate all the machines on the same cycle for a multi-tiered application. You would create a replication group name, whatever you want here, and then you would select the machines that would be using. And once again, I only have one here, so that's all that's going to show up. Well, I don't have multi-tiered, so I'm not going to do that right now, but that's where you would set up multi-tiered consistency, multiple virtual machine consistency. And then once that's set up, you just come over here and click Enable Replication. And you can click on here and see what's in process. And the very first thing it checks is prerequisites. Pass that pretty quick. Then it will install the mobility servers and process the target, depending on your machines, how long that's taking. Honestly, this machine is, as I mentioned, a virtual machine, and I have very minimal resources. So it's probably going to take 5 to 10 minutes, so we're not going to sit here and watch it. Once that passes, then it'll actually enable the replication and start the initial replication pass. How long that takes, once again, is how much data are we transmitting? What is our connection line? We can have a VPN connection into Azure, or we could have an express route. And if you're using an express route, you can have a much larger pipe and enable the replication to go much faster, as well as be able to transmit additional data. So if you're looking to replicate a large number of systems on a regular basis, you probably want to consider looking into express route and using that for it. And then once it's done, the update process status is only going to basically tell you if it's completed or not. And let me go ahead and jump back into my resources. Now, one thing I did want to show you is if I have a system that's actually replicating, and you see this one is still in the enable replication process, but this system is protected. It's already doing the replication. I can click on that system, and it'll open up the given piece here. This is where you would fail your machine over, but also notice that it has a test failover here. You can actually use the test failover to prove that your failover is going to work, and as I said, what that will do is that will actually spin up a virtual machine inside of Azure, and then you can connect to that machine inside of Azure and verify that your application on that server or in that tiered application, if you're using a multi-tiered application, is functional. If you want, you can also use that, for example, to test updates to that application. And you can do all this without affecting the application that is running in production. It's purely a test mode. Once you're done testing and proving that it does fail over correctly and all the data is there, and then any of your updates that you wanted to test or anything along those lines, you can delete that machine. At that point, you're only paying for the virtual machine for a very short period of time, and you can go ahead and do that. You also use this if you actually want to do the failover itself. If desired way is, you'd be able to know that you're going to fail over for, for example, the flood's coming or something like that, and you can fail over cleanly. But reality is when disaster strikes, it's usually an unplanned failover. One of the things that you may notice here is complete migration. Is you can also set this up to actually use this to migrate machines from virtual machines and physical machines and migrate those into Azure. So if you're looking to move your systems that you're running on premise today and you want to start running them into Azure, this tool is one way that we can easily complete that migration. There's obviously steps that we need to do in order to set that up as well, but it definitely makes sure that we get that synchronization going and give it time for the full synchronization to happen, do our test that it's going to work, and then actually go through and complete the migration on there. So it's a very beneficial tool, not only for site backup, but for replication of devices as well. So the next thing I wanted to show is the actual backup. And well, backup isn't real exciting here, but I just kind of wanted to run through it real quick as well. And so I basically go in here, and what is the workload that I'm running? Is it on-premise? Is it in Azure? And what do I want to back up? And once again, I don't have a whole lot of options because this is a lab here, but this could show what I'm trying to back up from. And then I'm going and choosing which policy am I setting. And the policy basically says, when are you backing up with, how long is that backup point? I only have one policy created. Actually, no, I guess I created two. So you have this policy that's set. You can also, as you see from here, create a brand new policy if you need to create a new, parameters around when you want to do that backup and the retention. And these are all items that you can have set in here. As I said, how often are we doing the frequency, the backup? When is it starting? When is it running? Is it daily? Is it weekly? How long are we going to keep this? You notice it's keep here. We have retention is set for 180 days. We can change that to 360 or 2 days or 7 days, whatever fits your needs. And how long are we going to keep the backup points? And then the retention of the yearly backup as well, and then go ahead and set that. I'm not going to go ahead and create that, so let me just go ahead and use my demo. Just wanted to show you that you can, at that point, go ahead and create a new policy if need be. And then you're going to you'll see all the different machines in here that are set up and it knows about. And you just basically choose, okay, which one am I going to back up at this point? Let's just go ahead and choose tester 1. And we select that, and then we enable the backup. And at that point, it's going to go off and run the backup on the schedule that we have. You can, if you so choose to, go into the backup items and look at the virtual machines that are doing. And one of the things you can do is click over here and do it a backup now. So if you want to make sure, let's say, for example, you have an application server and you're getting ready to do an upgrade of that application, but you want to make sure that you've got a good backup just in case. We can come here and tell it to back up now, get a good fresh copy of that backup, and then you can go do your testing and be able to restore if you need to. Along that lines, I can also, from this point, go ahead and click restore in the event that system died and I need to restore some data, and I can click restore on there. And then you see come in here and it'll list, since I just started this lab a little bit ago, it's only showing one area, but I select one restore point. With multiple backups, you'll see additional restore points there. So you can choose which time period you need. And where am I going to restore this to? What is the machine that's going to be called to restore this data to it? And then are we going to use a new restore group, or are we going to use one that's already been created? And it doesn't like my machine name. Okay, trying to make it too short there. What network is it going to restore to be able to, use that system being from restore? Or what you may need to do is just perchance restore it to a temporary virtual machine and copy some of the data off to a different account, and then click OK. I'm not going to restore this one, just take some time there. But as you see, it's pretty simple to do a backup and restore of that. So that pretty much wraps up the demonstration. What I'd like to do at this point is to kind of go through and talk a little bit about New Signature. So who is New Signature, and what can we provide, services can we provide to you? We are a consulting firm. We are 100% Microsoft focused. So pretty much if it has anything to do with Microsoft infrastructure or we can provide consulting services for that. You see up here some of the key areas we do, although this is not by any means the only pieces we do. We also have the capabilities to provide services along the lines of creating applications, creating mobile applications, custom mobile applications. For example, we created a mobile application for a car dealer that allowed their sales reps to be able to use the tablets and show and quickly pull up on their tablets any information about any car or vehicle that the customer was interested in. We also have managed services, so if you would like us to be able to monitor your environment and say keep the environment patched, troubleshoot along those lines, we provide managed services as well. So we are the Microsoft Solutions Expert. We were Microsoft's Partner of the Year in the U.S. for 2014 and 2015, or was it 15 and 16? As well as, our focus is all around customer service. We understand a consulting business, everything is about the services we provide and our reputation. And since our mission is we want to make sure we delight the customer, whatever services we are providing to you, our focus is to make sure you're 110% satisfied with the service you provide and you're getting exactly what you need in a timely and a cost-effective manner. So for that, I'd like to thank you for your time. As I mentioned, this will be recorded, but if you have any questions following up, you can reach out to us at info@newsignature.com. And at this point, are there any questions in the Q&A?
I turned off the Q&A, but I didn't see any questions in there prior to, but I would love anyone who we have the chat window back open, so please feel free to put any questions there or unmute yourself and ask is fine as well. Again, thank you for joining us, and we will send out this presentation and the recording, but yes, please do ask questions if you have them. Okay, so if you have questions and you think of them after the presentation, please do feel free to message that info@newsignature.com or any of us who have been emailing you about this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on future events.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.